Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy my new stories every day. The sun barely crested the horizon, painting our neighborhood with the soft hues of dawn, as I sipped my coffee and stared blankly out the kitchen window. The trees swayed gently in the early breeze, their leaves whispering secrets to one another. A mundane, peaceful start to another typical Friday. Or so I thought. Jenna moved through the kitchen with a rehearsed elegance that used to captivate me. Her dark hair, perfectly arranged, shone as she fixed her breakfast and talked on her phone in clipped, hushed tones. I didn't pay much attention, morning conversations had become background noise over the years. But today, something in her demeanor was off, as if she was acting out a scene she had practiced many times before. She ended the call, poured herself a second cup of coffee, and turned to me. "I'm going out tonight," she said, almost too casually. "I probably won't be back until morning." The mug slipped slightly in my hand, the warmth jarring me back to reality. Her tone wasn't laced with apology or explanation, it was a declaration, cold and unyielding. I looked up at her, my mind trying to connect dots that suddenly scattered across the landscape of our life. "Going out?" I repeated, more to myself than to her. "Yes." She shifted her weight, eyes darting momentarily to the window. "It's something I need to do." "You're strong, Thomas. You'll understand." The way she said it, like some prophet delivering news of an inevitable storm, set my heart racing. The silence that followed was so thick I could almost touch it. I nodded, the muscles in my neck tight, my mouth dry. "Do what you have to do." The words came out more steady than I felt, a lifeline of composure to cling to as my world tilted. Jenna's expression softened, almost surprised, as if she had anticipated a different reaction, an argument, maybe tears. But I gave her none of it. She blinked once, twice, then nodded back, and just like that, she walked out of the room. I stayed at the table long after she was gone, staring at the pattern of the tablecloth, my mind replaying every subtle change in her behavior over the past year. Those late nights she dismissed as overtime, the quick, sidelong glances at her phone, the sudden interest in staying out with her friends, it all clicked, pieces falling into a picture I didn't want to see. I felt my breath quicken and forced myself to close my eyes, to slow down, to think. The last thing Carrie needed was to see me unravel. At 13, she was already perceptive beyond her years, and her laughter was one of the few constants in my life that still brought me joy. The rest of the day was a blur of autopilot tasks, mowing the lawn, running errands, anything to avoid the quiet that invited the storm inside my mind to roar. Jenna left that evening with barely a word, dressed in clothes that were a shade too bold, perfume trailing behind her like a whisper of betrayal. The front door clicked shut, a sound that resonated deeper than it should have. I stood by the window, watching as she drove away, her silhouette merging with the growing darkness. That night, I sat in our living room, every shadow stretching and shrinking as the hours crawled by. The silence was a living thing, pressing in on me, weighing down my chest. A low hum of rage simmered beneath my skin, tangled with hurt and confusion. When had we become strangers in our own home? At what point did the shared laughter and quiet moments turn into a stage for deceit? I grabbed my phone, staring at the clock. It was past midnight, and the house felt hollow, stripped of the laughter it once held. I forced myself to lie down on the couch, staring at the ceiling as memories swept over me. Our wedding day, Jenna's smile wide and bright under the late afternoon sun, her fingers gripping mine as if anchoring herself to this new life. The night Carrie was born, Jenna's exhausted, tear-streaked face breaking into a soft, radiant glow the first time she held our daughter. How did we get here, from that to this? Sleep came in fits, and each time I closed my eyes, I replayed the evening, dissecting every detail, trying to glean answers that wouldn't come. The early morning sun bled through the curtains when I finally gave up, heading to the kitchen to make another pot of coffee. I sat, waiting for the door to creak open, for Jenna to return with an explanation that would fit neatly into the chaos she had created. The sound of tires on gravel snapped me to attention. She walked in, her face a mask of practiced nonchalance, but there was something new there, satisfaction, maybe relief. My stomach turned. She didn't meet my eyes as she passed, heading straight to the bathroom, the door shutting firmly behind her. The silence left in her wake was suffocating. Determined not to let this pattern continue, I knew I needed to act. Ignoring would be easy, but not this time. Not when the cracks in our marriage were so wide, they threatened to swallow me whole. I grabbed my laptop and started my search, emails, messages, anything that could shed light on this dark corner Jenna had carved out of our life. The truth was crueler than I'd anticipated. Hidden away in the digital debris of her social media and old chat logs were names, places, a narrative of betrayal that unraveled with each click. One name stood out, Derek. A coworker, I assumed, who featured heavily in Jenna's nights out. Pictures of them at dinners, timestamps aligning suspiciously with her work trips. My hands shook, rage coiling in my chest. I had options now. Proof. But I needed more, something that would make her face the life she had willingly shattered. A plan began to take shape, each detail a bitter stitch pulled tight in the fabric of my resolve. The next step was clear, I would confront her, but not in the heat of my anger. No, this needed to be done with precision, the kind that would ensure she couldn't twist her way out. But as the morning wore on, I sat there, coffee forgotten and cold. The quiet moments before confrontation are the loudest, filled with what-ifs and the shadows of every memory turned sour. The morning sun climbed higher as I sat at the kitchen table, eyes locked on the door Jenna had disappeared behind. Each tick of the clock echoed like a drumbeat in my chest. My mind ran circles around itself, sifting through the digital debris of what I'd found, messages, photos, places she'd been but never mentioned. Derek's name sat at the center of it all like a black mark on paper that no amount of scrubbing would erase. Finally, the door creaked open, and Jenna stepped out, her hair damp and clinging to her neck, her eyes carefully neutral. We exchanged a glance, hers cautious, mine sharpened by what I now knew. She gave me a small smile, the kind designed to disarm, but this time it felt hollow, a fragment of a mask that no longer fit. "Morning," she said, casual as though we were just two people starting an ordinary day. I swallowed hard, letting silence sit between us. She hesitated, her gaze flicking to the clock and back to me, an unspoken question. The tension in the room coiled tighter. "Late night?" I finally asked, my voice more even than I felt. She blinked, then looked away, busying herself with the coffee pot. "Yeah, it was. Just needed a break, you know." The casual tone scraped at my nerves. I almost laughed at the irony, how the truth, so flagrantly ignored, could become invisible when framed just right. The day stretched on in a parade of practiced normality. Jenna moved through the house like everything was as it should be, chatting lightly with Carrie when she came home from her friends. I played my part, too, holding conversations, sharing meals, pretending that the ground beneath our feet wasn't already split. But as the evening drew near, my patience thinned, the weight of what I knew pressing against my ribcage. When Carrie finally headed to her room, I waited a beat before turning to Jenna. She was at the kitchen counter, sorting through mail, oblivious to the storm about to break. "Jenna, we need to talk," I said. The pause that followed was sharp, slicing through the mundane rhythm of our day. She froze for a moment before placing the stack of envelopes down, turning to face me. The guarded look was back, eyes scanning mine for clues. "What's wrong?" Her voice was steady, but the subtle edge told me she knew exactly where this was going. "I think you know," I replied, holding her gaze. The tension crackled between us, static before a strike. She opened her mouth, then shut it, a flicker of something, guilt, maybe, shadowing her eyes before she forced a smile. "Thomas, if this is about last night, I told you, I just needed time." "Stop," I cut in, sharper than I intended. "Don't play that card. I stood up, moving to the small table where I'd laid my laptop earlier, the screen already dimmed but ready. Sit down. A tremor passed through her, quick and nearly invisible, but I saw it. She sat, hands folded tightly in her lap. The act was one of defiance more than compliance. I turned the screen to face her, pulling up one of the emails I had found. A message from Derek, timestamped just weeks ago, his words a searing brand, "Last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about you." Her eyes widened, pupils darkening with recognition, and for a moment, just one, her practiced mask slipped. "Thomas, I." No, the word was a weight between us. "You don't get to explain it away. Not this." She leaned back, the air between us charged with something raw, unfiltered. "How long have you known?" she whispered, voice low, almost resigned. "Long enough." My hands clenched, nails pressing crescents into my palms. The trips, the late nights, the secrecy. I pieced it together. And last night was the final proof. Her eyes darted to the door as if escape was an option. I stepped closer, forcing her to look at me. "Why?" The question held every ounce of hurt I had been holding in, trembling with the need for answers. Jenna's jaw tightened, her defenses coming up like a shield. "Why?" "Because I was drowning, Thomas. Because you were so wrapped up in your own world that I felt invisible," she spat, the words edged with anger, twisted with justification. My pulse thudded in my ears. Invisible? The word felt foreign, a lie trying to root itself in our story. "I built this life for us, for you, for Carrie. Everything I did, every late night, every sacrifice was for this family. And yet, you weren't here," she fired back. "Not really. You were in the house, yes, but you were absent. The distance grew, Thomas. And I didn't know how to bridge it." Her voice cracked then, and I saw the glistening in her eyes, a tear that clung stubbornly before falling. I wanted to reach out, to touch her the way I used to when things made sense, but my hands stayed at my sides, heavy and unwilling. I swallowed, letting her words settle, the pain threading through them sharp and complicated. "So you turned to him," I said finally, the statement hanging between us like a verdict. She nodded, silent now, eyes downcast. The room seemed smaller, the weight of everything unsaid filling the space. I took a deep breath, steadying myself for what came next. "Here's how this is going to work," I said, my voice cold and unfamiliar. "I'm done pretending. You can't stay here and expect us to act like this never happened." Her head snapped up, eyes wide. "Thomas, please. We can work through this. For Carrie's sake, for us." "No," I interrupted, my voice steadier now, a finality to it. "You made your choices. Now, it's time for mine." Her expression crumpled, the resolve cracking as the reality of my words set in. I turned away, leaving the room before the remnants of our conversation could pull me under. The sound of her quiet sobs trailed behind me as I walked down the hall, each step echoing with the hollow thud of a door closing on what we once were. I stood at the end of the hallway, staring into the dim light of Carrie's room where faint music played. It was comforting in its normalcy, even though the rest of my world had veered wildly off course. Jenna's sobs, muffled but persistent, reached me even here. I forced myself to breathe, to focus on the steady rhythm of air moving in and out. I couldn't afford to falter now, not with everything that came next. The rest of the evening unfolded in a haze. Jenna stayed in the kitchen, her presence like a shadow pressing against the walls. I busied myself with mindless tasks, checking the locks, tidying the living room, anything to keep my hands moving and my mind from wandering too close to the edge. When Carrie called out a soft goodnight, I paused, steeling myself before walking to her door. "Night, sweetheart," I said, my voice almost breaking as I leaned in the doorway. She looked up from her phone, a smile spreading across her face. Her eyes, so much like Jenna's, held an innocence I needed to protect at all costs. "Night, Dad. Love you." "I love you too," I managed, the words sticking in my throat. I closed her door gently and stood there for a moment longer, eyes shut tight, gathering the strength to walk back down that hallway. When I returned to the living room, Jenna was there, sitting on the edge of the couch with her arms wrapped around herself. The vulnerability on her face was raw, unguarded. For a second, I almost faltered, almost let that old, reflexive urge to comfort her take hold. But then I remembered the messages, the lies, the nights she'd chosen someone else over us. "What now, Thomas?" she whispered, breaking the silence between us. Her voice was thin, trembling under the weight of everything unsaid. I leaned against the doorway, crossing my arms over my chest. The exhaustion seeped into my bones, making the distance between us feel infinite. "You pack a bag. You leave tonight." Her eyes widened, and she took a sharp breath. "Tonight? Thomas, please, let's think about this." "Carrie." "Don't," I cut in, a sudden edge to my voice. "Don't use her as a reason to stay. She deserves better than this." "Than lies." Jenna's face crumpled, a tear slipping free despite the battle she waged to hold herself together. "Where will I go?" It was a quiet, desperate question, the kind that burrowed under the skin. "Anywhere but here," I said, the coldness in my voice shocking even me. I turned my gaze away, looking at the picture frames lining the walls, snapshots of vacations, birthdays, memories now marred by what I knew. The silence stretched on, heavy and suffocating, before she nodded, a slight, defeated gesture. She stood slowly, her movements deliberate, as if each step drained her of energy. I watched as she disappeared down the hallway, the quiet rustle of drawers opening and closing marking her progress. I sank into the armchair, the one I always gravitated to after long days, and let the room's stillness settle around me. The weight of everything bore down on my chest, suffocating. The part of me that had wanted this confrontation, that had longed for the clarity of anger, felt hollow now, a victory that tasted like ash. Minutes blurred into an hour. The sound of her soft footsteps brought me back to the present, and I straightened as Jenna walked back in, a small suitcase in her hand. She set it down by the door, turning to face me one last time. "Thomas," she said, voice catching. She opened her mouth to continue but seemed to lose whatever words she'd planned. Instead, she just stood there, eyes glistening, a mixture of regret and something deeper that I couldn't, or wouldn't, name. I looked at her, searching for the woman I had married, the one I had built a life with. But that version of Jenna felt as distant as a dream now. "You need to go," I said, softer this time, but no less firm. She nodded, the acceptance of a sentence long due. With one last, lingering glance, she picked up her suitcase and opened the front door. The night air rushed in, cold and biting. She hesitated, as if waiting for a last-minute reprieve that wouldn't come, and then stepped outside. The door closed behind her with a quiet click that echoed through the empty house. I sat there for a long time, listening to the silence. It was a different kind of quiet, not the comfortable, shared stillness of two people content in each other's presence. This was hollow, gnawed at the edges by what had been lost. I pushed myself up, forcing my feet to carry me to the window. Jenna's figure was a silhouette against the faint glow of the street lamp, walking toward her car. She paused, head bowed, then lifted her face to the sky as if searching for answers in the constellations. The sight tugged at something deep inside me, but I turned away before it could take root. I walked back to the kitchen, where the remnants of our confrontation lay, her untouched coffee cup, a crumpled napkin with traces of her lipstick. I picked up the cup and dumped the cold liquid down the sink, watching it swirl away. The house felt like a stage after the play, props left behind, the actors gone. I moved mechanically, switching off lights, locking doors, until finally, I stood in front of our bedroom door. The room looked the same as it had that morning, but now it felt foreign, a place I no longer belonged. With a sigh, I reached for a spare blanket from the hallway closet and headed for the couch. Sleep, if it came, would be fitful, but at least it would come. And tomorrow, I'd start finding my way forward, one heavy step at a time. The following days were a strange blend of numbness and relief. The house felt different, quieter, emptier, but also lighter in a way that made me feel guilty. Carrie, thankfully, seemed none the wiser. Jenna's absence was explained away with a vague, "Mom's visiting a friend," and for now, that sufficed. I wasn't ready to tell her the truth, to shatter the safe world she knew. But nights were harder. The stillness after Carrie went to bed left me alone with the reality of what had happened. I went through the motions, work, errands, dinners, but it felt as if I were living on the surface of my life, afraid to sink any deeper where the pain truly lurked. Jenna had texted once, a simple "I'm safe," to which I had not replied. One evening, as I returned from work, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked at the curb, a sleek, black sedan that screamed money and status. My heartbeat quickened, a strange mix of dread and curiosity pushing me forward. I walked up the drive and paused at the front door. Voices floated from inside, one was unmistakably Carrie's, laughing. The other was deeper, male, and unfamiliar. I stepped in and was immediately greeted by Carrie's delighted grin. She ran over and hugged me, her warmth momentarily dispelling the tension coiled in my chest. "Dad! You're home. I want you to meet someone." The man rose from the couch, smoothing down the front of his tailored suit. He turned, and my blood ran cold. It was Derek. The same face that had haunted my sleepless nights, only now flesh and bone, smiling as though he belonged here. "Thomas," he said, extending a hand with a practiced charm that made my skin crawl. "I hope it's okay that I stopped by. Jenna asked me to check in on Carrie and lend a hand while she's away." The room spun, reality splintering into something surreal and incomprehensible. I stared at him, at his perfectly composed expression, and at Carrie's face, so innocent, so unaware of the tension slicing through the room. "Of course," I forced out, my voice tight, fighting the urge to lunge at him. "I didn't know Jenna asked for help." Derek's smile widened, and I could feel the hidden edge behind it. "She wanted to make sure everything was going smoothly for Carrie. Thought it'd be nice if she had someone familiar around." Carrie beamed. "Derek said he's been to all the places Mom used to tell us about. He even brought some pictures of them together on their trips." My heart thudded dully in my chest, each beat an echo of betrayal. I glanced at the coffee table, where an album sat open, pages filled with photos of them at various places, evidence of Jenna's double life flaunted under my roof. I clenched my fists at my sides, feeling my composure splinter. "That's very kind of you, Derek," I said, words strangled by the effort it took to keep my anger contained. "But we'll be fine. Carrie and I have managed just fine before." Carrie's smile faltered as she picked up on the tension, eyes flicking between Derek and me. Derek's expression, however, remained smooth, an infuriating mask that dared me to act. He was enjoying this, I realized, the audacity of walking into my home, playing the benevolent guest while flaunting his affair with Jenna. Before I could think of what to do, the sound of another car pulling up outside broke the standoff. Carrie peered out the window and gasped, "Mom's back early." She dashed to the door before I could move, throwing it open as Jenna stepped inside, eyes wide with surprise and something more, panic, perhaps, when she saw us all together. "Jenna," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "we were just talking about you." She swallowed, glancing at Derek, who now wore a look of polite amusement. "Thomas, Derek cut in smoothly. "We were just catching up, Jenna. Making sure Carrie was well taken care of, as you asked." Jenna's eyes darted between us, and I saw the realization dawn on her face, the trap she had unwittingly set for herself. I stepped forward, placing myself between Derek and my daughter, who watched everything with a mixture of confusion and worry. "I think it's time you left, Derek," I said, the finality in my voice making it clear there was no room for argument. He chuckled, low and cold. "Of course. Just remember, Thomas, not everything is as it seems." With that, he walked past me, brushing my shoulder as he left, the door clicking shut behind him like a gunshot. The silence that followed was suffocating. Jenna stepped forward, her face pale. "Thomas, I didn't know he'd come here." "I swear." "It doesn't matter now," I interrupted, my voice hollow. "You brought him into our lives. That's all I need to know." Carrie's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, what's going on? Who is he really?" I turned to her, heartbreaking. "Someone who doesn't belong here. Someone who won't be coming back." Jenna's face fell, and for the first time, I saw true regret in her eyes. But it was too late. The damage was done, the final act complete. And as I stood there, surrounded by echoes of what was once my family, I realized that justice sometimes comes not with shouts or violence, but with the quiet closing of a door.